Hello, friends. Thanks to the organizers for giving us this opportunity to present responsible design practice for collective living. First, let us understand why we are talking about this. In today's context, we are trying to in, capture this situation, the dilemma, in this kind of a simple graphics. So, one hand we have the impacts, and on the other hand we have the time. What we see here in the pre-industrial condition, the environment impact is comparatively at the very less, at the very low end. As we have grown, our industrial development, etc., suddenly the development growth pattern, that curve has kind of rising a steep slope. But what we also noted, the impact on the environment and nature has even surpassed that curve and rose at a very steeper rate to a kind of a situation where just at the beginning of the COVID, we have reached at that peak where the pollution level is alarming, the sea level is rising. It's a complete catastrophe. Now, COVID, there is a complete shutdown and a lockdown. So, what also been reflected in the way it has impacted on the environment. The environmental quality has substantially improved. The original state of the flora and fauna has been restored back, and it's a kind of a regenerative process. So, this has really asked us to think that why all these things happen. Look at this kind of a situation. So on one hand, we have this traditional bazaar that we were enjoying in the traditional times, and now it is the completely other kind of models that we are following it today. So there has been some problem in terms of our this is the kind of a situation. So why it is really happening? The first and foremost, the steep development goal that we have kind of registered is based on the kind of work culture that we follow, which is extremely growth driven, energy conscious, energy intensive, and uh, a centralized kind of input system, and thereby it is extremely disruptive to the nature, environment, and ecology. Now, our work culture is also supported by the values that we produce. Now, our values has become very individualistic of the self gain and so on and so forth. So, this is a kind of a desire instead of the happiness that we enjoy. The greed has become a prime motivator, and as a result, there has been a setting of the apathy. So, there is a kind of a human disconnect, resulting in almost discarding our responsibility to the society and nature. If you take it, it's almost like a linear process. So there is a starting point and there is an end point. The moment something ends, it always results into a lot of wastage in terms of man material, in terms of resources, both natural and otherwise, and also capital. Now, as against, this kind of a process is not really sustaining. Why? So we look at the pre-industrial situation and try to see the kind of economy they have propagated. It's a more of a cyclic economy where nature and man-made actions are kind of a balance. And just to depict this, I took the liberty of showing you this clock from an old temple which is 400 years old. This particular emblem called is Rasha Chakra, which is the circle of life, where it shows the relative interdependence of every component in life and also depicts their continuity and a regular growth of evolution. Now, this is a extremely sustainable model which we are propagating in terms of circular economy and so on and so forth. To be able to see this kind of a, so we need to relook at our traditional settlements and try to see if a settlement that is 800-year old, it is still resilient, still kicking and very vibrant and socially connected. So we can learn some things from them which has not been as disruptive as our modern settlements. This is a town called Vishnupur, which is in uh, Bankura district of West Bengal in India, and this particular place is a very drought prone area. Now, how people will be sustaining in a drought prone area to start with? So, what they have done is they have understood water is an essential element that can help to sustain their life. So, livelihood is dependent, and to be able to connect them all together in a value system which is their tribal cultural norms. Look at this map. All around there is this water catchment area. In fact, it was so powerful that even in a Maratha siege, this town has survived for 10 years. That is an important point. So they have first ensured the life is sustained. But life is not only sustenance, it also has meaning. It has also certain other purpose, which is a collective wisdom. So socio-cultural institutes were brought in. All these small circles, which are the temples, which are the socio-cultural institutions, which emphasize the overall value system of this settlement. These are these temple forms. These are the temple typologies. So essentially this brings to our fundamental questions of traditional architecture. Now in traditional architecture, the things which are permanent of certain values, only those buildings were kind of given special emphasis. To be able to create this kind of a special building, you need sthapatis or the builders guild, some kind of a trained craftsman mason group in a holistic way to be able to produce this kind of a building. And so all the societal norms, culture, everything is embedded in that practice. So, but their basic model is maybe residential blocks, but then from there they have evolved to scale it up into a monumental thing for collective groups. So that is why the sacred space and other things are very essential. Now, these are the kind of technicalities of the forms and things. And to be able to produce this, these guilders, they have masons, layout persons, various people, craftspeople, the philosophers, everything was put together. So that is how they should be able to produce these. They also generated a supporting associated craft traditions in various forms. So it's a basically celebration of life, even creating these tangible elements. Now, this is where certain permanent values are, but there are daily values in terms of housing, shelter, every other thing. And for that, they have also devised a system called building traditions, which is basically popularly known as vernacular architecture, and they help it to is by the people for the people. So it's a very continuous evolutionary practice which is extremely contextual, and it gels well with the surroundings, and because it's the people, so they also has to celebrate their forms of life in different forms. The local materials were perfected in terms of construction techniques and technology, giving them permanence, regular level of maintenance. All these are ingrained in building traditions. But once these tangible structures are built in, how people will celebrate has come the intangible aspects to make a complete human experiences. And these human experiences, the nature always falls a similar kind of a contributing part into this whole. So you have these gathering spaces and rituals and practices. Even then, in the festivals or the place where there are more collective wisdom, the public spaces, they also re-establish their connections with the local flora, local fauna, the kind of kirtans, the bhajans, the way they celebrate the public space. So, having come down to this, we now think that if this kind of settlement has sustained for so long, so what is really essential into their practice and our modern day practice? So, here at this point, we like to invoke the quotation from the Mahatma Gandhi. He said, "If you want the change, be the change." So why we are trying to do this? So we have shifted these paradigms into responsible building practice. As opposed to the modern practice, this has to be extremely grounded. It has to be passionate, so there is a human connection. It has to be humanistic approach, so thereby inspired from the traditional values, the traditional wisdom into practice. So it's a collective thinking, a collaborative process instead of individualistic production. And it has to be a local kind of enterprise, a decentralized system. So instead of displacement, today development always means displacement. But here we are talking of development, which instead of development, it emphasizes the continuity. So waste of any form, be material or resources, will be converted back as a potential for further development. At this point, how really we can practice this in reality? So we are taking a first example which has an existing fabric. We are talking about Gorpanchakot. It's a 400-year-old historic city, now in complete ruins. In this kind of a situation, only these permanent traditional models are still existing. So the first stopping point was how to restore it back. So this is the point where when we started intervening, and then we realized to be able to restore it back, we have to invoke the building traditions that existed, depend on their traditional wisdom, invoke, revive the traditional craftsmanship, their techniques and technologies, revive the craftsmanship for also empowering the village economy of the artisan community, which are actually losing these craft traditions. And while doing that, there are technical problems. Instead of demolishing that, we have incorporated that and brought it back again to the mainstream development realm. So this is how the tangible structure has been restored. Now we are in the process of engaging with the communities to put the soul into this building, bring back, revitalize the traditional practices of the sacred space into something which is meaningful for the community and for the region at large. Now we come down to a completely a greenfield situation. It is for reviving Antoday Ashram and orphanage in rural Bengal, rural Bengal area in West Bengal. And here, what we are trying to do is, in this greenfield selection, we to safeguard this Antoday Ashram, we followed a model called community-based rural tourism program by UNDP propagated campaign. Here, with the local artisan, we devised a model which is can be operated as a tourism product to support and cross-support this Antoday Ashram. So we sit with the local artisans, develop on the building practices, they are develop their kind of a model and created thing and from a typology inspired by the Chang typology of Brahmaputra floodplain, which uses heavily on the local skill and activities and thereby improvising it for the modern day needs. So what really happens is here we are coming down to this is the end product where we have utilized the water management system, reconstruction of memories, emphasizing the shared values, and also recreating the cultural norms and standards that has already taken place in this area. Today, this is one of the 6 most popular destination of West Bengal, a must visit tourism spot visit. So while in building practices, what we are trying to say is that if we depend on the understanding of how this thing totally work and gain purposeful and meaningful, get into the respecting of the existing fabric and how to kind of value add into the next future, which is a definite possibility to create a resilient infrastructure for the development model. With that, thank you very much.